This video will focus on the relationship between God and man. I will explore several texts that depict the power imbalance between creator and those created. At the core of this video will be the idea of self-inflicted dystopian conditions because of humanity's choices. God gives us the options to rise above the temptation, but we succumb to these desires. The texts that demonstrate this will be Oryx and Crake, the Critias, most commonly known as the story of Atlantis, and the story of Genesis, when Adam and Eve doomed humanity once and for all. The idea of a dystopia arises from a person's discontent with current society cranked up to the worst place imaginable. Dystopias are often created as a warning for those enacting certain behaviors that will lead to the fall of humanity. All the texts that we will discuss have elements of dystopias and the situations that came to be because of the decisions of those who deem themselves above God or nature. The three texts that I will discuss all have a connection that relates to the relationship between creator and created. When one loses faith and stops worshiping those who created them, or becomes cocky thinking they can outshine those who gave them the gift of life, desperate situations arrive with no turning back. The first text we will discuss introduces the concept of modernity, essentially what the world will look like in the future because of technological advances. Human beings overdevelop many things, often ridding themselves of natural resources in order to achieve a material objective, which has deadly consequences. We create beings that are created using technology intermixed with biology. In Oryx and Crake, one of the protagonists, named Crake, believes that humanity has run its course. His objective is to create a new species on Earth where he would presumably rule above them. Crake is trying to become a god himself. He is a brilliant man, but his own ego is clouded his judgment and led to his downfall. Crake indifferently accepts the world he lives in. His belief system revolves around the notion that attributes not necessary for survival are obsolete. Essential things, like breathing, should be kept, but things like emotions should be completely obliterated since they're not essential for survival. In a society that promotes emotional detachment while praising scientific brilliance, Craig excels, and his cruelty and arrogance are nurtured, while his discontent towards humanity grows. The ability to distinguish what is real or fake does not exist, since the process is no longer important. Cost effectiveness alongside profit is the objective. Even if the eyes are the windows to the soul, we surround ourselves with things that overshadow that. Craig enjoyed sadistic content, branded as entertaining, believing it showed flair to know when you've had enough. He glorifies suicide, exposing his disregard for humanity. That furthers the concept of what a dystopia is, because he's trying to create a new world that hurts others but benefits himself. In his mind, I would argue that he considered what he was creating a utopia, but ultimately it had different results. His disdain for those around him extends towards his relatives as well. After witnessing the death of his mother, he describes the incident clinically. Craig's cold reaction suggests that a society centered around technological advancement displays a correlation between overall social progression and disappearing moral values in society. The culmination of his detestation of humanity as a whole arrives in the form of Bliss Plus. This pill personifies self-indulgence, compelling individuals to purchase it because it promised consequence-free sex. Craig exploited this point by marketing Bliss Plus as the cure for unwanted pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases, cleverly hiding the fact that the product is a virus that kills anyone who takes it. This begs the question of whether or not Craig's actions deserve some merit. While his choices were unethical, it gets lost in the grander scheme of things, since this whole society is immoral. Corporations wiped out hundreds of species without any regard because it benefited them. They funded Craig's research and developed dozens of viruses themselves with the intent of selling the antidote for income. The annihilation of a world that lacks any sense of moral deserves little to no sympathy. Now, as we turn, we see someone that approaches this society differently. Jimmy, or Snowman, lives with childlike innocence that fades away into conformity, which then transforms into disdain. When Jimmy morphs into Snowman, the earliest memory that he recalls is seeing a bonfire where an enormous pile of cows and sheep are burned. This instant depicts a horrifying situation where animals are massively murdered, and a helpless child's response is the only humane one. The duality of man is shown while Jimmy is worried about the disinfectant that was poisonous, and he shouldn't splash it into the ducts of the little eyes that he wears as boots, while his father has a cold response, only thinking about the profit that this animal will give to those around them, and how he will be able to profit off it. This also paves the way for his appreciation for culture and literature, because as he sees humanity throwing away his morals, Jimmy wants to latch on to any possibility he can to not have those morals disappear themselves. He preserves his sanity recalling these things, which is a very powerful, hopeful message in contrast to the devastating event that presumably wiped out the rest of humanity. In the world of Oryx and Crake, different characters embody both of these practices, portraying the deadliness of an imbalance of power can create, leading to the extermination of humanity itself. Nature is equivalent to God in this text because at the end it is what prevailed among all. While humanity struggles to adapt to a world that is unfamiliar and is littered with hardship, nature overtakes every aspect of what is around it. Nature prevails over technology in every aspect. It decays the previous glorified scientific achievements and restores it to its rightful place in the balance of the universe. Now shifting gears to another story, we talk about Poseidon, who bestowed on the Atlanteans the ability to grow powerful and protect themselves from threats. However, as they accumulated power, their ethics disappeared and were replaced by a hunger for power, just like Crake's. Then by the way of divine intervention, Zeus believed an equitable race in a miserable condition, he gathered the council of gods to discuss suitable punishment for the Atlanteans who were not appreciating their creators. The judgment of the gods is final and cannot be reversed. A city that resembled the Garden of Eden because of how comfortable and lush it was to inhabit risked everything because they disrespected their Lord and Creator. Which is why, by way of divine punishment, the island was cursed with earthquakes and floods and sank into a muddy sea. Now we turn to Hesiod, that talks about the Golden Age, which marked a time individuals yearned to recreate a perfect society that no longer exists. An all-encompassing religious presence at the core of the myths of Hesiod, Genesis, and Critias. Hesiod focuses on the decay of humanity from the Golden Age to where it currently stands. Hesiod regrets being born into the Iron Age, where the gods send terrible pain and vexation. This resentment is indicative of feeling powerless because of your circumstances and does not allow you to succeed. Hesiod continues his tale by emphasizing how gods and humans go back a long way together. This bond between creator and their creations is displayed in Genesis and Critias and in Oryx and Crake, which could be another reason the Golden Age is idealized. Humanity felt loved by a higher power, which is why they didn't suffer. Which is why Pandora's box was released upon the world. Zeus's punishment to mankind plagues humanity with awful diseases that did not exist before. Similar to Eve, Pandora's curiosity brought eternal devastation among society. Pandora had everything in her control, just like Eve, to make another decision, but instead her selfishness was her downfall. A constant theme in these texts is discontent between, as we previously discussed in Oryx and Crake. Humanity is often arrogant and craves a new way to view things, despite the damages that may occur. Pandora's story, though, has a hopeful message. Unlike Atlantis that will forever be submerged in the sea, Pandora releases a bit of hope into the world as well. Genesis depicts how arrogance and being unappreciative led to the fall of humankind. Eden was a flawless paradise that lacked nothing, but that was not enough for Eve because she wanted to acquire the same level of intellect her creator possessed. Wanting to be like God, knowing good and evil, Eve subjected herself to a life of mortality and pain. She ate the fruit from the forbidden tree that God did not allow her to, and her ungrateful decisions led to the fall and affected society as a whole. Now, as time passes on, it brings the question, of final judgment and divine intervention. If human beings continue to become self absorbed with each other and forsake those who gave us life, are we ultimately doomed to a life of misery? Nature demonstrates a rapid decline because humanity continues to place comfort and scientific achievement above preservation. A utopia will never exist within humanity because people are flawed and will never agree on a universal way of life. Because as long as humanity possesses free will, a difference of opinion is inevitable. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and are inspired to read all these wonderful texts.